Hello, I'm Chantel and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to make apple cinnamon air fryer donuts. Are you ready to learn? So to get started, we're going to start with our dough. So we're going to gather our ingredients, which is 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, a third a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of yeast, a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and a half a teaspoon of salt. Then we're going to go ahead and gather our wet ingredients, which is a half a cup of water and fourth a cup of milk, 2 eggs, a half a stick of butter, and a tablespoon of sugar. Now that we have all of our ingredients gathered, we're going to get started with our wet mixture, which is the half a cup of water, fourth a cup of milk. Heat that up to 110 degrees, no hotter. Add the tablespoon of sugar and the 2 teaspoons of yeast and give that a good stir and mix it up and let it bloom for 5 to 10 minutes. And then it's going to get nice and frothy and bubbly. We'll take our dry ingredients, and that is the 2.5 cups of flour, our half a teaspoon of salt, our teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and our third a cup of sugar. And then we're going to go ahead and give that a nice mix so that the dry ingredients are already incorporated before we start adding our wet mixture. Go ahead and place your dry ingredients into your mixing bowl. I'm using a stand mixer. You can do this by hand. It's just going to take a little bit longer and be a little sticky. So I put the dough hook attachment on my mixer and I took my bloomed yeast mixture. You can see it's nice and bubbly. And then I went ahead and just added that into the dry ingredients. And then we're going to get the mixer going. As the mixer's going, I'm going to add a fourth a cup of melted butter. You want to make sure that the butter is not boiling hot. Don't let the butter be hotter than 110 degrees because it could shock and kill the yeast that you just added. And then give it a nice stir and it'll look a little bit like pie dough at this point. And just scrape down the bowl and get it going again. And then we're going to add 1 egg. So we're going to let the egg incorporate. And I have my mixer on a 2 to a 4 at this point as I'm just mixing the ingredients together. I then go ahead and scrape down the bowl again so that I have a nice incorporated dough as I go. And then I'm going to add an egg yolk. I'm going to separate the 1 egg so that I have the white for later. So go ahead and give that a nice mix on a 2 to a 4 again so that it gets nice and incorporated. After the eggs are incorporated, you can go ahead and turn up your mixer a little higher so that the dough starts to combine. You can do that at a 2 to a 4 and you can run it for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you're going to see that the dough tears pretty easily. So we're going to go ahead and put it on a 4 to a 6 again for 5 more minutes, and then we're going to check the dough again. We're checking for elasticity of the gluten building up, and then we're also looking for a nice window pane. So you can see here, you can see through the dough, it's nice and elastic. It's ready to rest and rise. So take an oiled bowl, you can go ahead and spray it with any kind of nonstick cooking spray, and then go ahead and place your dough into the bowl and cover it with cling film. Then you're going to put it in a nice, damp, warm place for an hour or until it doubles in size. I like to put a nice warm rag in my microwave and let it sit. As we let our dough rest and rise, we're going to get started with our apple filling, which is 3 apples, a fourth a cup of ginger juice, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a fourth a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, a teaspoon of vanilla, a tablespoon of cornstarch, and a third a cup of brown sugar. Then we'll go ahead and peel, cut, and core our apples. And we're going to start off with the apple mixture in a pot with our cut and cored apples, our spices, and our brown sugar. We add our ingredients in stages as we're making this apple filling. So as you cut your apples, I like my apples a little bit chunkier, so you can cut them smaller than this, absolutely. Go ahead and add your spices after the apples are nice and cut in your pan and stir them up so that the spices are completely coating the apples. So we want to make sure that the spices completely cover the apples like it's shown here. Then we're going to add our brown sugar and do the exact same thing. We're going to stir it around until it's all nice and incorporated. And then we'll put this on the heat. At this point, I've had the apples on the heat for about 8 minutes, and as you can see, there's a lot of juice that gets released. So then we're going to go ahead and add our fourth cup of ginger juice, and we're going to continue to cook this for about 8 more minutes. We're trying to get the apples nice and soft. And then after the apples are soft, you can mash them down a little bit. I have a potato masher here so that there's some chunkier pieces and some smaller pieces. And then after it boils a little bit more, you go ahead and add your tablespoon of cornstarch so that the juices start to thicken. After the juices have thickened, you can go ahead and add your teaspoon of vanilla, give it a good stir, and remove it from the heat. So now we're ready for part 3. So our dough has risen for an hour and our apple pie filling is cooling. So we're going to go ahead and take half of our dough and roll it into a nice little ball and place it on a floured surface. I like to cover my counter in cling film and then dust the flour. It helps with the cleanup mess a lot, and so this is just my favorite way to do it. Then we'll take our dough and we're gonna roll it out. And as you're rolling it out, you can move the dough around. You might need to dust your rolling pin with some more flour. It's totally fine, but just take your time and make sure you roll it out in a nice disc. And then take your baking sheet for the second rise and dust it with some flour. You can take a biscuit cutter or cookie cutter and then start cutting out your donuts. So I'm going to make 8 out of this first round of dough, and it's pretty thin because we're going to put a layer on top of it because we're filling them, right? So we're making sure they're nice and thin. Then we're going to take that reserved egg white from earlier and we're going to brush the bottoms of our donut dough before we fill it. So you can see our nice apple pie filling is super thick, and I'm going to take 2 little spoons that I have and I'm going to go ahead and fill my donuts. So just go ahead and put on about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half of filling on each of the donuts, and then cut out your other 8 pieces from your other reserved dough and then put the other pieces of dough on top of your first donut and filling layer and then press it around. They look a little bit like raviolis, but we're gonna let them rise for 30 to 40 minutes. So my donuts have been rising for 40 minutes, so now it's time to get my air fryer basket ready. So I went ahead and took some vegetable oil and brushed it in my cool air fryer basket all over. I put it on the bottom, all over the bottom, and a little bit on the sides, but I don't want to use so much that my air fryer smokes. Then go ahead and place the basket back into the air fryer and heat your air fryer to 365. Now we're going to put 4 donuts in the basket at a time because that's my air fryer is a little small and I don't want them to crowd and touch. And then we'll put them in there for 4 minutes, give them a turn, and then do another 4 minutes. Now, if your air fryer is a little bit hotter, cooks a little bit hotter, you might want to do 6 minutes. So 6 to 8 minutes so that they're nice and cooked and delicious. And then we'll go ahead and do the other 4 donuts. Then we'll get our toppings ready. So that's 4 tablespoons, 6 tablespoons of melted butter, and go ahead and roll your donut around in the melted butter and then around the cinnamon sugar so that it is nice and coated and delicious and you get a bite of cinnamon sugar in every bite. If you liked this video, let me know in the comments below and like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed this recipe.